Hey, everybody. Welcome to The Courageous Choice. Really excited today to welcome a good friend of mine, Lynn Herrick. Lynn is an incredible leader who started her career in legal and human resources and wound up being a really integral part of the executive team as a COO. And one of the things that she accomplished in her career was playing an integral role in scaling Great Call. It's a health and safety organization that grew from pre-revenue startup to a successful acquisition by Best Buy with a valuation at $800 million. She has deep experience in leading M&A and all kinds of activities, and I'm really excited and honored that she agreed to join us today to talk about courage as it's shown up in her career and share some stories with us. So welcome, Lynn. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Jamie. It is a pleasure to be here.
That's awesome. You know, we Lynn and I have talked a lot about just our experience in leadership and in different organizations. Lynn, I'd love for you to share a little bit about your story and your background, and then we'll jump into the story about your courageous choice that you'd like to share with us.
Sure, thank you. I started as a traditional lawyer. I went to law school, I went to a big law firm, worked in the corporate legal field, and liked it, but always knew that I wanted to get closer to a business. So when I had the opportunity, I went in house. I did a lot of international law and really learned a business back when we lived in Michigan. And then we had the opportunity to move to San Diego. And when we did, I think this was the first time in my career, I consciously decided to be courageous. My husband worked for Hewlett Packard, which at the time was pretty safe company to be at and felt like a place that we could count on. And so we decided that I would look for companies that were more startups, a little more reckless, a little more exciting, a little more challenging, and see how that all played out. So I eventually joined a company called Great Call, and I joined as the general counsel. And for a couple of years, did that. And then we had many lawsuits when I joined, and they were all employee related. And so we had three individual employee actions and a class action lawsuit. And so I spent the first couple of years cleaning all of that up and then eventually went to the CEO and said, "Hey, maybe I could take over HR and get ahead of these things versus trying to clean them up through the legal department." And I did. And that eventually led to a really long career with an amazing company that we grew from really nothing to a very successful company that we're able to sell to Best Buy. And probably the other next real courageous point was when I then transitioned, added to my plate, kept doing the legal and the HR, but also added the COO role.
I know we're going to explore that, and I am really excited for you to share the story with us. I'm kind of noticing a theme too, actually, with you like moving upstream, right? Trying to get to root causes, and I think you'll share a little bit more about that. But so it's really a brilliant story of this organization that grew. And so when you came in and you saw the opportunity in HR to kind of get ahead of these things that were causing legal issues. I know you've told me about this story about how you kind of got tapped to take on the broader operations role. And, yes wasn't maybe the immediate answer that came out of your mouth, or it came with some additional words. Why don't you share a little bit about kind of what you were feeling and observing as you it didn't sound afraid. It just sounded intentional.
Yeah, well, one of the big parts about Great Call was our customer service. And most of our employees were in what would be called traditional call centers back then. And the whole idea behind Great Call is that we built products for seniors and then we provide amazing customer service so that they could learn how to use those products. And so instead of calling your kids and being like, how does this phone work? How does this work? How's that work? Like we provided that customer service. We wanted you to call us at all times and provided the most exceptional care to our customers. But really, the problem at the company was that the turnover rate at the call center was no better than any other call center anywhere in the country. And it was costing a fortune. And it was hard to give really good customer service. And I mean, to sum it all up, the call centers were on fire. And when that happened, is when the CEO asked me if I would take over the operations and primarily start with the call centers. And I was said, "No, I mean, it's a hot mess." And Um, and why would I take that on, right? It was right around the time that we were selling from venture capital to private equity. So it felt really like a really wild project to take on this thing that was on fire. And I didn't have any formal training and I didn't have an operational background. And so I said no the first time. And then he came back probably a month later and he was like, no, no, I really want you to do this. And he said, it's similar to HR. It's a people business. I think you are the right person to take this on. So I went home and I thought about it for a couple of days. And when I came back, I said, look, I will take this on if and only if you give me some runway. I mean, I really need 6 months to see if my ideas work. I have a vision for this. It is 100% different than the vision that you've had up until now, because it was really his responsibility until then. Um, I'm going to stop some of the things that you think are important and I'm going to try some new things. But I need that space and I need that time. And I need to do some hiring in order to do it. And to his credit, and I think this is something that I hope as a leader I continue to do for all of my people, he just said yes. And he said, I will support you. I will give you the space. And if it's not working, we'll figure it out together. So once I had that, then that gave me kind of the courage to go forward and try something that I thought would work, but I really didn't know if it would work. There was no roadmap. There was no other way to know if this was going to work.
So that is pretty awesome, actually, on a lot of fronts, on his front and on your front. We talk about this courage, right? And people often just lean into it without really thinking about it. But one of the things that I like to pause just for a minute. So he comes to you, he says, "Can you take this on?" You're like, "It's a you know what show. I'm not sure I want to take that on. And I don't really know what I'm doing." What happened like in your mind or in your body as you like were like, "Okay, what would be my vision? Like what would I even do?" Like I'm just wondering about the process of like, yeah, I'll do it if I can, like even being able to go back that was that like formulated thinking.
I think one, I love a challenge. I mean, I think starting with law school, I love a challenge. So even though I was saying no, I was immediately going like, but if I said yes, what would that look like? I love operations because I love cleaning things up and I love putting together a plan and then all the steps that go into it. So I immediately kind of went to that. I also really had this theory that, and I had kind of built this over the years when I was running HR, which was very involved with the call center, of course. And my theory was that call centers traditionally run on fear. It is a fear-based system. Did I get work on time? Did I get to work on time? Will I get a point taken off? Did I say exactly everything I had to say in the call? You're constantly evaluated and it's all fear-based. And so my theory was these are really smart people that are sitting here taking our calls, dealing with our customers. Many of them are really special people who maybe just didn't have a chance in life, had some bad luck, etc. If we took the fear out of this world and instead we instilled confidence and support, could you change the entire call center mindset? And could you get a different result? That was my theory, and that's really what pushed me to say yes. One, because I wanted to test it, but two, I wanted to help change these people's lives, and I wanted to make it a job with a potential career path, which no one had ever talked about or thought could be done. So I think when you asked me that question, because that's interesting, I was saying no, but thinking about what would yes look like.
Yeah, you're already solutioning and yeah, I love that. Gosh, this a system built on fear is just strikes home for me because I think so many of us, whether it's our own internal system and a framework that we look through, or in an organization, and we don't recognize like that's certainly not motivating or inspiring, right? And hopefully we're hiring adults who come to work trying to do their best every day, right? So how do we reframe that? Oh, I'm so excited for you to tell us about more. Okay, so you're like, "All right," and he says, Yes, I'll give you 6 months."
Yeah.
So what did you do first?
So first thing I did was say that I actually needed some expertise. We had a lot of homegrown people, but I really needed some expertise and someone else who had run a traditional call center and could help me instill the metrics and the systems and the other things that we need in place for this to be successful. And I hired someone who I, on paper, wouldn't have thought would be the right fit. But he came in and I said, look, I want to do this in a non traditional manner, but I need some of your traditional things in order to do it. And he agreed to do that. It was a big change for him to leave a big company that, was using pretty draconian measures. And then we together started to evolve this plan. Um, and the CEO at the time really wanted to rename the call centers caring centers. And I was like, yep, as soon as we start caring, then we can do it. And so, really, what we did was put together a plan that would be caring. And I said, when we get to that, then we can rename it caring centers. But right now, you're just putting a name on something that doesn't actually exist. So the plan was pretty multifaceted. There was a technology part because our technology was terrible. As you can imagine, as a startup, it was like duct tape together. So we had to put some basic technology in place. We had to put the right metrics in place so that we were measuring things. But we also started doing things like getting rid of shift bids. So this one, everyone thought I was crazy. Like, no, no, no. The only way to run this place is to do shift bids. And I was like, okay, who is this person that every 6 months finds out what their new shift is? How is that going to be a stable work environment? Like, now you work at night, now you work on the weekends, now you work here. And I'm like, that's absolutely
Can't
insane.
take
Like,
your
you
kid to
can't
school
build
or pick them
stability.
off. Right.
You
Yeah.
can't build a life. And they were like, well, everyone's going to want the same shift. I'm like, that is just not true. Like, it's just not possible. So again, we did things in stages. And I was like, why don't we do a survey and find out when people actually want what shift? Like, everybody has a different lifestyle here, right? And we were able to get rid of shift bids. And it was not a thing anymore. People hired into a shift. They could then choose to change, but you didn't have to change them all the time. That in itself already created a more stable work environment. Also, the dreaded point system for when you've shown up to work or haven't shown up to work. When I took over, I was like, I'm wiping out all the points and we're starting clean. And again, they're like, you can't do that. Nobody will come to work. And I'm like, I'm going to trust that most people will come to work, right? Because we're building a new system. We did have to put an attendance policy in place. I really wanted to get rid of it. We couldn't go that far. There had to be some guardrails. But the next thing is we were a very health and fitness focused corporation. And so at the headquarters, we worked out every day. That was a very big part of the lifestyle. So I said, well, I want to bring that to the call center too, and went to the point where we paid people to go work out during the day. Now, do we pay everybody every day during their shifts? I was like, if we're going to do it at the corporate office, we're going to do it here as well. That was pretty crazy. We also, at the time, were making our call center, caring center employees upsell, which every other call center does as well. And I didn't like it. And I was like, you're hiring people who want to be here to support and be compassionate towards elderly people. And now you're asking them to sell. So that was one of those with the CEO. I was like, look, it's this much a month. I don't think it's worth it. I'm stopping it. And that was another one where he stood by what he said, right? He didn't like that, but he stood by what he said. So we took that out of the calculation. We brought in financial advisors to help people get out of debt. And people who, again, didn't make a lot of money in the call center were able to get out of debt. So what we said is this is a holistic plan. And we are going to do our part to support you and make this a truly caring environment for you. And in return, we're going to ask that you come to work, that you don't go on, endless leaves, and that we really support our customers, that we be efficient on the phone, but that we don't monitor every minute, that we don't monitor everything that you're saying, but of course we make sure you're doing things properly. And we provide emergency services. And this was like high level call center stuff that we had to do properly. And the response was unbelievable, Jamie. Like not everyone, but almost everyone just rose to the occasion. You're no longer leaving to go to another job for 50 cents more an hour when you have all of this support. Not to mention my favorite thing is that we pushed a stack card around every afternoon, and a member of leadership, a director or a VP, would push that card around every day, provide a healthy stack, and say thank you. And those were the game changers. And we went from turnover of, 12 to 20% a month down to less than 2% pretty
Well,
quickly within those 6
in
months.
in a call center environment, I mean, I think it just strikes me on so many levels because there's a lot on the line, right? You guys were PE owned at that point? Or
Yeah.
yeah.
First year PEO. That's why I was so anxious to not, I mean, that's why I wouldn't take it. I was like,
Yeah,
really? I'm gonna put a
yeah.
spotlight right on me.
Oh my gosh. So I can get like it's almost this like pit in the stomach, but the courage around, okay, like I'm gonna try this. And it was, multiple experiments, kind of relatively not everything at one time probably, but some were running in parallel. Um, and you had to kind of bring people along in the journey. Uh, I'm sure you had to sell the vision a little bit. Did you do some kind of overarching comms plan or how did that work?
Yeah, we had, we called it, I think we called it the Caring Center Plan, and it was 2 slides that pointed out what was, what we were doing and what was gonna change, and I had to sell it as much to the rest of the people on my team and the rest of the people at headquarters as I did to the Caring Center. So you're right, I was selling it at both ends, and if you think about the leadership in the Caring Center, this also was uncomfortable for them because they'd all come up and they only knew one way to do this. So, excuse me, it was a lot of, "I don't think that's gonna work," and a lot of me saying, like, "I think it's gonna work, and I'm gonna take the responsibility one way or the other. So let's give it a try." So, yeah, a lot of people, I think watched from afar, and then as it started to work, jumped on. And, it was the same time that I was looking for to create a culture that could unify the headquarters, which was mostly younger engineers and marketing folks, et cetera, with our, caring centers. And so we were able to unify all of that under the kind of the umbrella of meaningful work because we were all there to do meaningful work. Because you didn't come work at this company unless you cared about an elderly person, whether that was your parents, your neighbors, a mentor, et cetera. It was just part of the process when we hired you on. Like, you had to care to be there.
So
And
that
so that
value alignment.
100%, and that really helped cement things so that, and I pushed real hard at headquarters. I'm like, if you are an engineer working on our product and you haven't spent this many hours at the caring center, you're not doing your job. Because call center is basically where everything rolls downhill, right? Everything that you design improperly in that device is going to show up on those calls. And so you better go sit there and listen to those calls. And so we really were able to build a really nice product circle there where the person who was developing it was listening to the problems at the end. And so
Yeah,
the
you
person
want
with
a
the
you want a perspective on UX, right? Like during these calls.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. Like, you go listen to what the people are saying of how hard it is to use the device. Don't tell me it's fine because you did a little bit of testing. I've got real people. But it also empowered the people in the caring center because they could bring forth any positive or negative and
Mhm.
bring that back to us. So it was like a really nice circle, which in a lot of companies you don't get because no one's talking to anyone at the call center because they just see it as like unnecessary, but not something that anybody values.
Right, and then you rely on translation through whether it's surveys or reporting or auditing or whatever. That's really, really interesting. I'm thinking about, like, we talk about leadership courage, and you and I have a lot of conversations too just about, bringing that I don't know what you wanna call it. You and I might call it HR or strategic, I don't know, like, organizational lens into the C-suite, but this is just it hits home for me because, yes, there's, like, the tactical day-to-day things that some people think about with HR, whether it's payroll or compliance or hiring and firing, those kinds of things, and those need to happen, don't get me wrong, but, like, if you're even at this stage, if they had been missing the strategic organizational lens, like, it doesn't sound like any other leader was stepping in with these ideas to make some really substantial culture shifts that you're gonna share some great news about results, right? Like, kind of
Right,
amazing.
and that's exactly it. We had really strong technical folks, we had really strong marketing folks, we had good finance folks, we had everybody who was doing their role. There was nobody, and this is what I think the COO job is bringing it all together. Um, I love sharing this story, so I'm gonna share it with your audience, but my colleague in marketing, I brought to him this idea of this meaningful work, and I was like, "Could you help me build a campaign?" I wasn't asking for much. I'm like, "Just give me some marketing resources and help me build a little campaign." And he said, "That is the stupidest thing I've ever heard of." And I was like, "Okay." And he said, "Nobody cares about that." I was like, "Okay." So I went back to my office and I just created it with a couple of the people on my team and we just kind of like drew it out. We made some symbols and they had some talent. So they were able to kind of make a nice little campaign and that became right, that became our culture and our meaningful work and our values, et cetera. So fast forward after that PE firm bought us, about a year later, Best Buy approached us, and we were able to sell the company to Best Buy, and again, we had doubled the price in that 1 year. So it was quite a remarkable time period. I had taken over the call centers. We're selling the company again. Like, it was insane. But towards the end of that acquisition, we were sitting in a really big conference room with the CEO of Best Buy, and there were, I don't know, there were like 50 people in the room, and they had like a 200-page deck. And he said, I want everyone to turn to page 52 so that you know why I am buying this company. So we're all like turning to page 52. It's the meaningful work slide. And I just sat there, and to his credit, he texted me 30 seconds later. He's like, "I think you saw something that none of us ever saw." And it was the most like, it was probably the highlight of my professional career moment, just because and all the people in the room that knew were just like looking, and I just smiled. But it was such an incredible moment because sometimes the thing that you believe in, other people think is really dumb. And sometimes it's worth continuing. So I always use that as kind of my story of like, yeah, just if you believe in something, just keep doing it.
You've shared, like, we know it has this incredible outcome, and quite frankly, I didn't even realize it was 12 months. That's, like, super fast, actually, for this kind of shift. Um, but I know it wasn't, like, always smooth sailing, right? Like, I'm sure you had days where you're home like, "Did I just, like, risk my career? Am I gonna fail?" Like, is there any story you wanna share that, like, something you overcame or those feelings that you still worked through?
Yeah, no, I think we had a lot of those days, right? I mean, there were months when you didn't get the results you wanted, or everything was going well, but this thing broke and this other thing doesn't work. And um, it was all kind of a whirlwind, I have to say, because then we went into the Best Buy world, and then pretty soon after that, we had COVID. So, I mean, it was kind of a crazy experience. And I stayed with Best Buy for 4 years there as a leader. So we had all the experiences, I would say. One thing that was really special about Great Call is just we really believed in what we were doing. And anytime we got kind of knocked down, which happened a lot, I'll give the CEO credit and the rest of the team. Like, we just picked ourselves up and kept going. And we had board members that, like, one time I thought back, it was more of a legal issue than operations, but I thought I was done because we didn't get a result we wanted. And he called and he's like, "You know what, Lynn? If we didn't get it this time, we're just going to double down and try it again. And if we don't get it that time, you know what we're going to do? We're going to double down and try it again." And I was like, wow. I mean, because not all organizations run that way, right? So from him, I took that energy. From the CEO, I took that energy. With my team, I took that energy. And so, of course, you have setbacks. You have days that don't go the way you want. Technology is not working, and customers are upset. But it was really an environment where you just took it, you picked yourself up, and you're like, how are we going to make this better? So it was a pretty special place to be.
Yeah, there's some magic in that really being, like, on the team together, right? Like, and it encourages, um, I guess it's the risk that comes with those courageous choices, but you're working towards, an aligned vision and common goals, right? And partnering in that together. Um, so when you look back, I mean, I know this is one of many examples we probably could have explored today. When you think about courage and resilience, we both have college age and recent grad kids. We talk to that age a lot about careers. What are some lessons you might share around just leadership courage and resilience?
Well, I think it's important to know, and I really didn't know this when I was my kid's age. Um, it like it doesn't just go uphill. Like, it doesn't, like, everything goes great all the time. There are ups and there are downs. And as much as the downs hurt, and especially when you don't want to watch your kids have downs, but that's where the real learning happens. That's where you find out who your real supporters are, and who your friends are, and who is going to walk right over you to get ahead of you, right? And that's where you learn the lessons. And that's when you realize it's not about things going poorly, it's about how you bounce back. And so I didn't even understand resiliency, to be honest. I came from such an upbringing where it was either good or it was bad. And there was no way to get from bad to good. But now I know, like, when things are bad, there is a good around the corner. You just have to find it. I really like the idea that when the door closes, a window opens. You just don't know which window it is. And I say that to my kids all the time because they don't always get what they want any more than I ever got everything that I wanted because it's just not how life works. But if you can, in that moment, absorb it, realize that a window's open, and then go find it, I think that's how you end up having success. And coming out of school right now, it's challenging. It's challenging to find a job. It's challenging to start a career. Once you start a career, I mean, it's just not easy, right? You have to learn the business. You have to learn the people you're working with. You have to figure out what your own style is. You have to develop a style. There's so much going on. But one is enjoy it. Two is learn as much as possible. And three is on the days when things don't go well, learn the lesson, figure out how you're going to fix it going forward. And then, if possible, don't just keep going over it over and over and over again. Because I spent a lot of time doing that, right? Like you just beat yourself up over and over and over again. There's zero value in it. And I think we all do it, right? There's zero value. So it didn't go well. You learn the lesson, put it away, and move forward. And I don't know if this is traditionally something that men do better than women, but I learned that this is the best from one of my CFOs. I was really upset about something, and he was like, "Hey, get over it." And I was like, "What?" He's like, "You just get over it." I'm like, "Wait, that's what you do?" And he's like, "Yeah." I'm like, "You just get over it." He's like, "Yeah, happened. It's done. Move on." And that was a big life lesson for me, right? Because up until then, I would just ruminate, blame myself, blah, 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 blah. And now, whenever I don't get something I want, I just hear his voice in my head. He says, "Get over it." All right, gonna get over it. So if people can learn that younger, I say go for it because it was
Uh,
a lot of suffering for no reason.
right? I hear you saying, like, get over it and find the window, right? There's probably something
From the window.
that we can't even see for ourselves or for our business that if we once we can get over it and get out of that cycle, we might then we can see it, right? So if we can just the sooner we start that, the better for our own mindset, but also in leading our organizations. And
Yeah.
that's really,
And
really powerful.
I think adding on to that also, if you're not in the right organization, make a change. And I had to learn that kind of the hard way too. I was at a great company in Michigan with a lot of great people, super smart, doing really good work, and it was the wrong fit for me. It just was. And it wasn't the wrong fit for my friend next to the office next door. It was great for him. It wasn't good for me. And so I really, again, a friend, a mentor pointed it out to me. She was like, "You don't have to work here." Oh, well, this is a good job. She's like, "But not for you." And so, and over the years, I've helped people transition out of companies too. There comes a point where like, this is not the right place for you. And those people got on to prosper. And so I think that's another thing. Now, again, when you're starting a career, you need to just kind of put your head down. But as you're starting to figure things out, recognize that some places are better than others for you. And it's okay to make that change.
Yeah, and so that starts with doing that kind of self-work to understand yourself, right? Which a lot of us aren't aware of. We're just doing it through learning, right? And so, I think today people get coaches or they get exposed to different things to kind of learn that and reflect it. I say this a lot. Do you feel like uh, I say if there's a values level disconnect, it's going to be unsustainable. And it doesn't have to mean bad. Like the company you worked for wasn't didn't have an integrity issue. It wasn't like a bad place. It just wasn't the right fit for you. And so does that make sense or is
100%.
yeah.
100%. I do actually think you should, if you're in a high enough position, even not that high, you should try to change it first. See if you can make a change because sometimes you can. And I say that to women too. Go into a job like, well, I don't love the way it's all working. Like, great, then change it. Because that is what I did at Great Call, right? Like, I didn't love everything about it, but I changed it. But sometimes you can't. Like, you just cannot. And so then I think it's okay to cut ties. And you're right. It's not a bad place. It's just not right for you. And I think that's kind of gives people a freedom that I just didn't feel like I had in my early years. Like if it wasn't good for me, then it must be my fault. But it wasn't. It just wasn't the right fit.
Right. Yeah, and I think we have fear too, right? Like, this is a great place. I'm lucky to be here. It's building my resume. Look how good it is for all these other people. This should be great, right? The good and bad, and kind of categorizing things, and so that's really powerful to like own your own journey. I think, and to your point about if the first thing is, can I change it? Can I have an impact either, like, if you're not a leader, even in how you experience your own role, right? And then as a leader, especially in the C-suite, like, I always feel but that's what we're there to do, right, is to make it better. You still sometimes can't, to your point, but if we can. So As we close, what final advice do you have for leaders that are wanting to make a difference?
I would say, think about why you want to do something or what you want to do or what is your vision. I feel like a lot of times people forget to spend that time and figure out what is the vision. What would this look like if it were ideal? And how many steps can you take towards ideal? What do you want to leave your employees with? Like, I want to empower as many young people as possible to learn how to come up in the business world so they can take over for us one day, right? And I want to give them as much visibility as possible, and I want to teach them the lessons, and I want them to learn from every single thing I got wrong. And like, that really excites me. Changing the lives of the people who worked for us in the caring centers, that really excited me. So figure out what it is. What is your vision? What do you want to do? And then in your environment in which you're in, make sure you do a really good job. Make sure you meet all your metrics. Make sure you're doing the things that help the company prosper, but figure out a way to do this too. And when you do that, work is about as fulfilling as anything can be.
That's incredible. And people want to follow. I love that it's come full circle. And now you're partnering with that CMO and CEO potentially on your next opportunity, right? So
That's right. And we're really excited to hopefully be able to do it all over again.
I have no doubt with that courage and leadership. And I'm so grateful for you sharing your stories with us today. Thank you so much, Lynn. And I hope that we'll do this again sometime soon.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for giving this an audience so people can learn about these things.
Thank you so much. Thank you for listening to The Courageous Choice. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a 5-star review to help get the word out about the podcast. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on any of our future conversations. If you'd like to know more about gig talent, please visit gigtalentagency.com or email us at podcast@gigtalentagency.com. See you in the next episode.